I think the biggest thing was they really tried to, and I think especially my mom, was it doesn't matter what the church thinks. It doesn't matter what the appearance is. We're going to make the decision that's best for you all. Not that she didn't care about the reputation of God's people or the Lord or anything, but she didn't let that get in there. Whereas, and I think my dad would admit, he would make decisions based on, well, this, what are people going to think about this or that? And mom would say, I don't care what they think. What I care about is this best for you all?
Hey everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Glass House. I'm Angie Elkins, the producer of the show, and we've got a special series coming up for you. Now, one of the things we hear from you as listeners all of the time is that you love our episodes regarding parenting in the glass house, raising kids in the glass house, all of those kinds of topics. And so we are so excited that we've got a series of 3 episodes coming out now about what it's like to grow up in the glass house. And today we're kicking it off with Kelly Minter. If you guys don't know Kelly, you should. Kelly is one of our beloved Lifeway authors and speakers. She grew up in the glass house. Her dad was a pastor, and you're going to get to hear all about that story today. We're going to link in the show notes where you can learn more about Kelly, see some of the things that she's written for us here at Lifeway. But guys, more than anything, we would love for you to share this episode with your friends who are raising kids in the glass house, because we know it's not easy, and we're here to do it with you. So here is Ben and Lindley's conversation with Kelly Minter.
Lindley, today we have one of our amazing friends, Kelly Minter, on the show.
Yes.
To talk about one of the most requested topics we get, which is how do you raise a kid in a pastor's house?
Or just have you survived growing up in the pastor's family?
There's that too.
And what
right?
was it like?
Yeah. That's an easy question.
Yeah, well, where's the question?
Because I know your dad, he has a big personality.
Yes.
And we've had him on the show, and he tells so many stories about just raising kids. Like one of the stories he tells, which I want to hear you talk about.
Okay.
Is the time that there was a situation at school, and
Okay.
he went with you to a teacher, and something happened that caused you to feel singled out as a pastor's kid. Do you remember the story?
Oh, yeah. Somehow a ball got taken out of the physical education storage room.
Okay. This is a great start.
And this one teacher really thought that I had done it, and I had not done it. And I said, I did not take that basketball, because I really hadn't. And she said, don't lie to me, because you are a pastor's kid.
There it is.
Bam. So that really, I was only like 8 or 9 years old at that point, or somewhere in that vicinity, or 10 or something. And I remember really knowing that's not right. No one should lie.
Right.
Like, it doesn't matter if I'm a pastor's kid or not. That's not a good standard there. Like the standard I think that Jesus set is that none of us should be lying.
Stealing basketballs.
And I didn't actually do it, but that really, now this is where I did sin, but that just really fired me up, man. I was ticked, and but that, yes, I still remember that to this day.
But here's a question.
She was very specific, yeah.
Did your dad handle that well? Did he defend you? Did he remain quiet so that people wouldn't think he was an overbearing father? Like, how did he play that out?
Well, here's the thing, and this is terrible because I don't have any recollection. I just remember coming home and telling the story. I don't know that it warranted necessarily a reaction. I mean, I remember them saying, "Well, that's crazy. You shouldn't have been singled out like that." But he might have said something. I just don't really remember that part. I just remember thinking, "What in the world?"
Was your dad a pastor from like as early as you can remember?
Yes. I was born. They started Reston Bible Church like 6 months or 3 months or something before I was born. So I was literally like born into
the church.
The church, yes. And at that point, I think it was the International Building, and then it was a Sheridan. But anyway, it was a hotel at the time in Reston. And they had one of the floors that they rented just a little room. Just literally, that's how small. Because when he started the church, he was just witnessing to people around. He was working at a golf club and shining shoes and giving golf lessons and racquetball lessons and all that kind of stuff. So I was born into it, and it was my whole life. Reston Bible Church was my whole life. It was really weird moving to Nashville at age 25 and then becoming part of a church and nobody knew me. Nobody cared. Nobody was asking my opinion. You know, nobody. It was weird to not be, just to be just a standard person in the church.
Right.
You know, but
It's weird in a good and a bad way, I'm sure. Because in some ways you like to be known, but not you personally, but
Yes.
people in general. And in some ways it's frustrating.
yeah, it felt more negative to me because I kind of thought, well, wait a minute, how come I don't know what the inside is, track is here. Like, I don't know I don't know the leadership. It was not that I had any decision-making powers or anything, but, you know, when your dad and your mom start the church, you're just aware of all the players. And
We asked your dad if he did family devotions with you guys, and he said
Yes.
no. He said it just didn't work. He said he tried it one time, it was horrible. He never tried it again.
way to stick with it, Dad.
But he said he would be
Perseverance.
like as conversational as he could be about the scriptures. Like as
Yes.
it came up along the way, or
Yes.
you know, in a store something might be happening. So like what do you remember about that?
Yeah, no, he was very much that way. And so both of my parents played a strong role in my faith. But to your question, for my dad, talking about my dad for a second here, he was very conversational. So I think he very much took that Deuteronomy 6 approach where he was always drawing connections. We did not have family devotions, but we had many, many family conversations,
Yes.
I will say. He was like the family meeting guy. So if I was upset at my mom, or I was upset at my sister Megan, or David was upset at us, we were always sitting down to have discussions.
How did you feel about that as a
So-
kid? Were you like, oh, because our kids, like whenever we call that meeting, our kids are like, are you serious?
Yeah. I don't remember. I do remember feeling like heard, you know, because my brother right now, he's raising his kids, and I said, listen, it's fine. I said, I know you've got some that are easier and others that are more challenging. I said, I was challenging until I was like 33. So it's okay. It's going to all work out. You know, the Lord you eventually surrender your will, you know, to the Lord. But I said, but listen, all those conversations where you let, I won't say which child it is, but one of their children, when you let this child talk it out, I said, now Dad let me do that ad nauseum. And my brother said, well, did it work? And I'm like, you tell me. I don't know. I mean, I'm in my late 40s. But he did let me talk a lot, and I appreciate that. I struggled a lot. I had a lot of anxiety. I even had some like early onset depression that I don't even think I can even totally pinpoint. But I was not an easy kid, and I had anger issues, and I was a little bit more explosive and punchy, and so one thing I appreciate about him was he was always willing to sit there and talk, even if we were circling, which I circled a lot.
Did you feel like he
You know.
slapped like Bible verses on, or did you ever feel like he tried to spiritualize it, or was he just really good at empathizing and listening?
He was good. I would say he did both. I would say he was good at listening, and even if he did bring a verse into it, or a passage into it, or a principle into it, because I don't know that he could ever help himself from that on some level, but I always felt like he was there to help, you know, there to listen, there to be a part. Even if we were sparring,
Yeah.
he was still present. He didn't, I don't remember him ever like blowing up and leaving the room.
Yeah.
You know, he was in there for the long haul of it. And I do remember him asking me one time on a walk, and I don't know if I was 15 or 14 or 16, but we were walking one night, and he didn't give me names, and he didn't break any confidence, but he was dealing with something really tricky in the church, and I don't even remember what the situation was. But he said, I have a question for you. How would you handle this? And I remember feeling very valued that he was asking my opinion on
That's
something. Cool. And like I said, I don't even remember what it was,
That's
but I
cool.
remember the situation. And so, yeah, I mean, there was a lot of good conversation, and I think that was really, really helpful.
You've been focusing on him.
I was wondering if you're going to ask this because I was hoping you would.
Well, I just feel like, I mean, your mom, gosh, she had 4 kids then in this church they've planted. She's feisty too.
Yes.
I mean, she's a fun personality.
Yes.
And so I mean, how was that for her? I mean, how do you remember anything that happened in the church that you thought, man, my mom handled that so well, or any story that you can tell just about how she walked through something that you really admired?
Yeah, my mom is more. I don't know if pragmatic is the word, but my mom, they're a good balance for each other because she could see real clearly. Whereas sometimes I do think my dad would think, okay, well, where's my verse for this, or where's my scriptural footing, which is a great question to ask. But sometimes life isn't always quite that clear. And I do remember one time going and seeking a counselor of a certain type that, for me, at a time in my life where I needed some help, and this particular counselor from a certain outfit, which will remain nameless, but he went down this whole path of like, have I ever been exposed to a Ouija board? Have I, all this stuff, and I'm looking at this person like, what, like. And I'm not saying that there's never a place for any of that stuff, but I mean, that was not where I was at 15. And I remember getting into the car and I was telling my parents a little bit about it. And for my dad, this was someone who had kind of like come highly recommended. And my mom goes, we are barking up the wrong tree. This is not, but she could just see it so quickly, like, this is not the approach that is, yes.
Discerning?
And yeah, they were, okay, thank you for that word. Yes, she's very discerning. And I think that was very helpful for many, many years. And my mom was also very honest, which, this probably, Lindley, too, from being around her. She's not going to tell you what even you want to hear, even if that would be helpful for a time, if she doesn't think that is what, and I have a distinct memory, and my mom remembers this too, but in my anxiety and in my angst with the Lord, we were sitting on the couch one night, and I think we were doing, maybe it was a Bible study together or something, and I don't remember exactly how old I was, but I wasn't old, maybe 11 or 12 or somewhere in there, and we had one word. The question was, what is one word to describe God? And I said, mysterious. And my mom just kind of looked at me and she said, that's your word? And I said, yeah. And I said, isn't your word something like that? And she said, no, my word is near, because the Lord is near. And I remember saying to my mom, like, but he's mysterious, right? Isn't he mysterious to you? And isn't it hard to, and she's like, no, he's not. I mean, yes, he's mysterious, but she's like, to me, no, that would not even be in my top. And I kept wanting her to affirm my word. And all these years later, she was like, I was not going to tell you that the Lord was mysterious to me, because he's not to me. And so we still have that conversation. And it wasn't that, it's so my mom. Because she just wasn't going to give an inch on her word. And she wasn't going to try to, and I think, too, she wanted me to know that the Lord is personal and that he is near and that he communes with us. And for her, mystery, that just wasn't in her box, of what she experienced.
Your parents are an amazing picture of opposites attract.
Yes, yes.
Your dad is such a larger-than-life, positive, like always has a smile on his face.
But such a struggler in his own way,
And your mom is so sincere and direct and I think just comfortable in her own skin.
Yes, yeah.
So when we met them, I remember thinking they're a really good balance.
Yes, they are. They are.
Because that's how God works.
Yeah.
So I was thinking about this in terms of our listeners. So if you are talking to our listeners who are primarily ministry leaders, what is something that you remember your parents that they did well as you guys were being raised? If they were going through a situation, how they handled it well. Does anything ring a bell?
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. I think the biggest thing was they really tried to, and I think especially my mom, was it doesn't matter what the church thinks. It doesn't matter what the appearance is. Doesn't matter what, we're going to make the decision that's best for you all. Like that was very much, not that she didn't care about the reputation of God's people or the Lord or anything, but she didn't let that get in there. Whereas, and I think my dad would admit, like sometimes he would make decisions based on, well, this isn't going to look good for, what are people going to think about this or that? And mom would say, I don't care what they think. What I care about is this best for you all and your relationship with the Lord and us and all of that. So I think my mom always put us, I don't want to say first in the wrong way, but she just really had she didn't worry about what everybody was going to think.
Yeah.
And my dad, I would also say, was that way. There were times where he wasn't, and I think he would say that, where he did worry about what people thought. But I think, generally speaking, he let us be ourselves. And I don't remember feeling a lot of like, oh, well, we have to do this because we're the pastor's kids. I don't remember feeling that. And I think, too, the other thing that both of them did well is they were very much the same on and off the stage and in and out of church. There was not, I never remember thinking like my parents switched or flipped a switch when they walked in the door. That's good. From church. And so I think that was probably the biggest thing, was they really were the same.
That's cool.
Wherever we were. And that spoke volumes to me because I wasn't like, oh, this is the church version and this is the house version.
I have a question for you. You and your siblings, from what I understand, are all very different.
1, 3, 2, and 4.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
me and my sister Katie, who's 3rd, we are very similar. David and Megan's 2, David's 4. They're very similar.
So I do wonder sometimes, like, how does out of one house?
Yeah, right.
Do such different children emerge? Like, you have a very theological bent. You're very studious. You like to chase down an idea for months and theologically.
Yes.
I'm guessing some of your other siblings are probably opposite to that.
Yes.
So
2 and 4.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, personality. Yeah, interest-wise is different. Personality-wise, my sister Katie and I are more similar, and David and Megan are more really relaxed and just chill. They're just very chill. I'm not at all. But some of it, I think it is that order of birth order, you know, and also I grew up in a very different home than my brother, who's 8.5 years younger than me.
Okay.
I mean, he was like eating Fruity Pebbles and, you know, Lender's
really
bagels and like what, you know, and I was like homemade bread for me and carrot sticks. And
we were with our family recently, and Ava said, you know, that I would have never gotten away with saying that, like what one of them said.
Yeah.
And I was like, I don't even remember what he said because I'm tired. I mean, you know, by that point, and she's right. She wouldn't have gotten away with it.
But here's my question. Our daughter is very theologically minded. Like, she reads, she's a serious thinker. Our boys just don't like to read.
Okay.
Even though they've come from the same house. How do you think, how was it that you caught that bug? Is it just nature, nurture? What happened?
Well, I think it's both, obviously, of course. But I do think I'm naturally bent those ways. But I think my firstbornness definitely played into it because I was going to Bible studies with my dad. I mean, I would go on Wednesday nights with him by myself. I mean, my mom wasn't even going to those, you know, because he was like going and leading.
Why did you go? Because he made you go, or you wanted to go?
No, I wanted to go. I mean, it was kind of interesting. The desserts after the fact played in, but it wasn't the whole thing. I was always very interested in the church. I think too, the church was so tiny when I was born that I really kind of watched them build something from scratch, and I was part of it. We were part of it. You know, it's like, oh, we're going to have this service day. Well, I'm there.
Extended family.
Yeah, or missions conference was a big thing, and I loved being there for the whole weekend. And so, and I think I don't remember, you all would be a lot more up on these studies, but it seems like the people, though, that served in their local church growing up, not just went to youth group or whatever, but actually were part of being there, tearing down, setting up, all that, they're in the faith or have a stronger track record, if you will, or something.
They got their hands dirty.
Yeah,
that'd be an interesting study.
Part of it, not just being serviced by the church, but we're actually serving.
Yeah.
And I was kind of like that by default, but I enjoyed it. And my mom took me on my first mission trip when I was 14. We were exposed to a lot, but not just from the seats, but actually we got to actually like you said, get our hands dirty and be
That's
part
really
of it. That
interesting.
really made a difference.
So not only did your brother grow up in a different family, he kind of grew up in a different church.
He kind of did. Oh yeah, everything was just
established.
poshy and ready. Yeah, it was ready for him now. Like they had the cool youth group and the cool, and all the stuff. And he went on they did this bike trip every year, which was awesome. And I never went on it. And we were talking about it the other day. And he's like, "You never did the Florida bike trip, like with the youth group, and we end up in Disney World." Right? I was like, "No, I didn't do that."
Wow.
But I got other experiences.
I love that.
But yeah, he really did. The church was very established at that point, and I think there was something to be said for me being part of it in the earlier years. I remember when Reston Bible Church broke ground for its first building that they paid cash for, which still to this day, that was such a mile marker miracle.
Wow.
And we had service projects, and there's a picture of me, behind my dad. He's got his shovel, doing the dig, and there I am at like 10. That was a big day for us.
Yeah.
And so I think, they did a lot of things well. I think the things that they would say that weren't as well, it was just there was some legalism that bled in from, and when I say legalism, I feel like I have to define that term now because sometimes people don't even know what I'm talking about. But the idea that God's going to be happy with us if we do the right thing. And yes, God is happy for us to obey him. He delights, but where we feel like we can manipulate him or earn his favor, or we're doing it for appearances or that kind of thing. And so that's what I mean. And there was a good bit of that. Some of that was just where evangelicalism was at the time. And maybe now we've swung too far. Now there's no standard or whatever, and people are just kind of doing whatever. But for me, there was a lot, not even just from our home, but just around me where I felt this is what a good Christian looks like. And there wasn't enough emphasis, I don't think, looking back on Jesus, the cross, who he is, what he did. There was that for salvation, for sure, but not necessarily for every single day of your life.
Well,
this
hard.
is what
it's hard to tie that in, even though it's the thing.
Yes,
it's just so much easier to address behavior.
Yes.
So we only have a minute left with you.
Right.
I would be interested if you answer this question. There's a family out there. They've got a Kelly.
Yeah. Oh man, I'm so sorry.
He's a pastor. Pastor's wife are listening. They have a kid that's a spitfire, a lot of personality.
Yeah.
They don't know if she's even going to end up a Christian.
Yeah. Right. Very good.
What do you
reasonable
say
thought
to encourage them?
Yeah. That keep praying, pray, and also once that will is surrendered to the Lord, it's wonderful. Because then you begin to use that energy and that vision and the spunk and whatever it is, and the passion for what the Lord has.
That's good.
And that's where I feel like I am now by the grace of God. But now I am focusing all of that to, whether it's working with JMI and the Amazon and working with jungle pastors or orphans in Moldova or my own neighbors on the street, serving people, loving people. That is, I love that. And so just keep praying for that will to be surrendered to the Lord, because that's what changes the behavior. We're never going to change our behavior until we bow before Christ. And I think there was a lot of reasons why I was wrestling with that for different times in my life. And of course we always do. We always circle back around to those moments where we have to surrender again every day. But
that's a good word.
That was
really
good.
So. Thanks for being on the show and talking about what it means to be a pastor's kid and what it's like.
Hey, we could have kept talking a lot longer. We talked too long, but there's a lot to say about it. But I think I will just end with this and say I'm thrilled. I wouldn't have wanted a different story. So
that's a question we've asked people is if you could redo it, which you can't, but you know what I mean? Looking back, would you grow up in a church again, church home?
Yes,
again?
Yes, I would. I would absolutely have grown up as a pastor's child and in that family and helping them be part of something from scratch as well. Totally. Yep.
Lindley's dad has a saying that his mom used to say, which is, if you like where you ended up, don't complain about the path that got you there.
There you go.
And I know it wasn't easy being a pastor's kid, but look how God's used it. I mean, one of our leading authors at Lifeway, and thank you so much for all the ways you partner with us and all the Bible studies. I know you're working on Esther right now.
Yes.
When does it come out, and what can people expect?
November 2024. So a little ways. But yeah, I will say the one little, behind the scenes thing that I think is interesting is that the story is so much about God's faithfulness and not nearly as much about Mordecai and Esther's amazing, courageous behavior. Although I don't want to take anything away from either of them. I don't. But boy, is this God at work.
That's cool.
Yeah.
Can't wait to see it come out. Thanks,
Awesome.
Kelly.
Thank you, guys.
The Glass House is brought to you by Lifeway. It is produced and edited by Angie Elkins with help from William Hall. Sound engineering by Donnie Gordon. Artwork by Heather Brzezinski. And photography by Rebecca McVeigh.